I was 13 years old and in 7th grade when this happened. Our school was in a small city in Kentucky, and every year, the 7th grade class took a field trip to a state park about 2 hours away. It was one of those trips that had been happening for so long. It had basically become tradition. Same park, same trails, same packed lunch in a paper bag, same permission slip that parents signed without really reading. Nobody thought twice about it. There were about 60 of us that year, split into 3 groups, with 2 teachers and 1 parent chaperone per group. I was in the middle group, with my teacher, Mrs. Callahan, a parent named Mr. Devlin, who none of us knew, and about 18 other students, including my best friend at the time, a kid named Marcus. The morning was completely normal. We hiked the main trail, ate lunch at the picnic area by the lake, skipped rocks, did the things you do on a 7th grade field trip. Nothing unusual, nothing memorable, just a pleasant enough day in the middle of October, when the leaves were turning and the weather was cool and clear. The incidents happened on the second trail of the afternoon. It was a longer loop that took about 45 minutes to complete, and wound through a denser section of the park, away from the lake and the main picnic areas. About 20 minutes into the trail, our group got slightly spread out the way. Groups of 13-year-olds always do on a trail. Some kids were fast, some were, and the teachers were trying to manage the pace from both ends. Marcus and I were somewhere in the middle of the group, when we noticed a man standing off the trail about 30 feet into the trees to our right. He was just standing there watching the group pass. Not a park ranger, no uniform, no equipment, just a man in regular clothes standing among the trees watching us. I nudged Marcus and he saw him too. We looked at each other and kept walking the way you do when something feels off, and you are not quite sure what to do about it. I looked back twice, and both times the man was still standing there watching. The third time I looked back, he was gone. I told Mrs. Callahan when I caught up to her at the front of the group. She listened and looked back down the trail and then told me it was probably just another hiker and to stay with the group. I believed her enough to stop thinking about it. We completed the trail and gathered at the trailhead to count heads before heading back to the buses. Mrs. Callahan did the count twice, and then did it a third time, and her face changed on the third count. She pulled Mr. Devlin aside and they spoke quietly, and then she told us all to stay exactly where we were and not to move. 2 students were missing, a girl named Brianna and a boy named Cody, who had been at the back of the group for most of the trail. The next 20 minutes were the most frightening of my life up to that point. Both teachers and Mr. Devlin went back down the trail, while the rest of us stood at the trailhead, with strict instructions not to move. Park rangers were called. The other 2 groups were notified and their adults came to stay with our group while the search began. Brianna and Cody were found about 15 minutes later. They had stopped to look at something off the trail, and the group had moved on without realizing they were no longer following. They were about a quarter mile back, completely fine physically, sitting on a log waiting for someone to come back for them. But Cody said something when they brought him back that I've never forgotten. One of the rangers asked him if anyone had approached them while they were waiting. Cody? Said? Yes. He said a man had come out of the trees and stood near them for a minute, and then asked them if they were lost. They? Said. The man told them to stay where they were, and someone would come back for them. The ranger asked Cody to describe the man. Cody described him. It matched the man Marcus and I had seen standing in the trees, watching our group pass 20 minutes earlier. The park rangers searched the area and found no one matching that description. They said he was probably just a hiker who had seen the kids were separated from their group and tried to reassure them, which was the charitable reading of what happened. Maybe I have thought about it differently for the last 15 years. A man who positioned himself to watch a group of children pass on a trail and then appeared next to the 2 who had fallen behind. Whether his intentions were good or not, I cannot say. What I can say is that Brianna and Cody were found, and they were fine, and I am grateful for that. Everything else about that day, I have never been able to put down completely. Story. So this happened when I was 16, and on a school trip, rather than a standard field trip. My high school in Ohio ran an annual overnight history trip to Washington, D.C. for the junior class. 3 days, 2 nights. About 80 students, multiple chaperones, the full itinerary of monuments and museums and government buildings that you do when you take a busload of American teenagers to the Capitol. Had been looking forward to it for 2 years. Most of us. It felt like a real trip. Not a one-day school outing, but an actual experience with hotel rooms and restaurant dinners, and a level of independence that felt significant at 16. The first day and a half were everything I had expected. The monuments, the Smithsonian, dinner at a restaurant where we pushed 3 tables together and were probably insufferable. The second evening we had 2 hours of free time in a designated area near the hotel before a 9 p.m. curfew and mandatory room check. A group of us, maybe 8 or 9 kids, decided to walk around the surrounding blocks together. We were about 4 blocks from the hotel when our group naturally split the way groups do. Some people wanted to go into a convenience store. Some wanted to keep walking. I ended up in a smaller group of 4, me and 3 others. Walking half a block ahead of the rest, that is when noticed a man following us. Pre-made unnoticed him because he had been behind us for 2 full blocks, and every time we slowed down, he slowed down, and every time we stopped at a corner to wait for the light, he stopped too but did not come up to the corner. He stayed about half a block back, always the same distance. I pointed him out quietly to the girl next to me and she looked back and confirmed she saw him too. We picked up our pace and turned a corner without signaling. Italiano. He turned the corner behind us. We crossed the street mid-block. He crossed at the same point. We stopped abruptly outside a shop and looked in the window. He stopped. By this point, all 4 of us knew what was happening, and nobody was pretending otherwise. I called one of our chaperones on his cell number, which we had all been given at the start of the trip for exactly these kinds of situations. He answered immediately, and I told him quietly where we were and what was happening. He told us to walk directly back toward the hotel and stay on busy streets, and that he was already heading toward us. We started walking back. The man followed. 3 blocks from the hotel, our chaperone appeared, coming toward us from the other direction. The moment the man saw an adult walk in purposefully toward our group, he turned and walked away, quickly, in the opposite direction. Our chaperone watched him go, and then walked us the rest of the way back to the hotel. He reported it to the front desk, and they called the police. The police took a description, and said they would patrol the area. We were told not to go out in small groups for the remainder of the trip. I do not know who that man was, or what he intended. I know that he followed 4 16-year-olds for 4 city blocks, and only stopped when an adult appeared. I know that we had been given those chaperone numbers for emergencies, and that having them was the difference between a frightening story and something much worse. Still have that chaperone's number in my phone. I have never deleted it. I do not know why exactly. It just feels like something I should keep. Story 3. I teach 4th grade now. Have done for 7 years. And I want to say before I get into this that I tell the story not to frighten parents or to suggest that field trips are dangerous, because I do not believe they are. I have chaperoned more field trips than I can count, and the overwhelming majority of them are completely fine. I tell this story because it happened, and because I think about it every single time I take a class somewhere new. This was not my class. I was not yet a teacher when this happened. I was 17 and volunteering as a junior helper on a field trip run by my old elementary school. A teacher I had when I was in 4th grade, Mrs. Oak, had asked me if I wanted to come along and help manage the kids on a trip to a local history museum. It was a Saturday, and I had nothing else to do, so I said yes. There were about 25 4th graders, Mrs. O'Kafer, one other teacher, and 2 parents. I was the extra set of hands. My job was basically to stay at the back of the group and make sure nobody fell behind, while the teachers led from the front. The museum was small, local, the kind of place that exists in every mid-sized city and is genuinely interesting if you are into regional history, and genuinely difficult to get through if you are 9 years old and would rather be anywhere else. The kids were mostly well behaved. A few of them were pushing the limits of Mrs. Okafer's patience, but nothing out of the ordinary. We were about an hour into the visit when a boy named Theo came to me at the back of the group and told me quietly that a man had spoken to him. I asked him what he meant, and he said a man he did not know had come up to him a few minutes earlier while he was looking at one of the exhibits and talked to him. I asked him what the man had said. Theo thought about it for a second and said the man had asked him if he was there with his family or with his school. Theo told him with his school. Then the man had asked him what school, and Theo had told him. Then the man had asked him what grade he was in, and Theo had told him that too. Then the man had asked him if he liked the museum, and Theo said it was okay. And then Mrs. Okafer had called the group to move on, and Theo had followed. I asked Theo where the man was now, and Theo pointed across the room to a man standing near one of the exhibits on the far side of the gallery, looking at a display case. He was middle-aged, casually dressed, nothing about his appearance that would stand out in a crowd. I walked over to Mrs. Okafor and told her quietly what Theo had told me. She listened and then looked across the room at the man, and then she did something I have since understood was exactly the right call. She did not confront him. She did not cause a scene. She did not alarm the children. She calmly gathered the group and moved them to the next gallery and then to the one after that. And then she found a museum staff member and told them what had happened. The museum staff member called a manager. The manager called security. Security located the man still in the gallery and spoke with him. We were never told the outcome of that conversation. We were told that the man had left the building and that security would be monitoring the rest of our visit. For the rest of the trip, Mrs. O'Keefe kept the group tighter than she had before. No straggling, no one more than arm's reach from an adult. Theo stayed next to me for the rest of the visit and held my hand getting back on the bus without being asked to. On the bus, right back, Mrs. O'Keefe sat next to me and said, "Something I have carried with me into every classroom and every field trip I have run since." She said the scariest thing about moments like that, one is not what happened. It is how easily it could have gone unnoticed. Theo told me because he trusted me enough to say something felt off. Most kids that age do not say anything because they do not have the words for it yet. They just feel uncomfortable and stay quiet and hope it goes away. She said your job on any trip with children is not just to count heads. It is to be someone they feel safe enough to tell. I became a teacher partly because of Mrs. O'Keefe. And I have never once taken a class on a field trip without thinking about Theo holding my hand on that bus and the man across the gallery, looking at the display case and everything that was caught. Just in time because a 9-year-old trusted his instincts enough to speak up. Field trips are supposed to be the highlight of the school year, and most of the time they are. But these 3 stories are a reminder that putting a large group of children, somewhere unfamiliar with limited supervision, creates opportunities that most people do not want to think about. Pay attention to the kids around you. Listen when they tell you something felt wrong. And if you are ever in a position to be the adult that a child trusts enough to tell, be worthy of that trust. It matters more than you know.